Okay, so Portugal, it'd be good to start with a little bit of thought as to, I mean, it seems to be gaining quite a lot of momentum and notice as a potential sort of uh, place for data centers development, etc. So what's going on, if you like? Why is it becoming such a hotspot?
Yeah, it's a great place to start. I mean, I've been in the industry for a few decades now, or going on a few decades, and within the data center industry, obviously everybody's used to the what's always been called the tier one locations, right? So obviously we don't need to list them all, but London, Paris, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Hong Kong, Tokyo, New York, these sorts of places which have been gravities for data and data centers for obvious reasons, financial centers, global trade centers, and data has always followed those locations logically. What's happening now, and it's been happening, I would say, relatively gradually over the last 4 or 5 years, sort of post COVID, is increasingly there's an energy squeeze in these markets. Data centers are ramping. I'm sure we'll touch on it today about AI, putting more and more requirements onto data centers. But even pre-AI, normal data usage has been going through the roof from end users and enterprise and businesses. And this has put the squeeze on these tier one markets more and more. And we've seen various regulations and actions taken. Singapore, where I used to work, initially put a hold on any new data centers and then limited it. Amsterdam went something similar. Frankfurt, even London now. There's no formal squeeze, but data centers are struggling to find power. What this has developed into is really tier two or tier three locations, as they were traditionally called, becoming more and more interesting to data center users and end customers. And in Europe, that's traditionally been Scandinavia because of obvious power benefits. Environmental, humidity, it's cooler. You can use outside air for cooling, etc., etc. But now, long-winded answer to your question, also Iberia. And I say Iberia because it's really a sort of a joint rise of Spain and Portugal. Primarily, I would say because of the reasons I listed, that people just can't find the power, or the ramp of the future view of power in these other markets. And also the peninsula itself, and I'll speak to Portugal specifically. Amazing renewables. So last year was 70% plus for the whole country. Our campus that we're developing is 100% renewable, but the country hitting 70% is pretty staggering, and they're looking to raise that more. Phenomenal connectivity, given its location as the westernmost point of Europe, and connection to North America, South America, Africa, and Europe. So huge amount of cables coming in. And for our campus, it's the fact we've got so much power, 1.2 gigawatts, which is vast. Still the largest campus in Europe with that sort of power access in a single campus. And we're using seawater cooling. So based on the location it's a very unique solution. We're looking to use seawater without taking up fresh water or water that will be consumed and then thrown away. We'll use the seawater and then put it back in. So those are some of the highlights of Portugal to give you some color.
Okay, yeah, and for those reasons, I guess Start Campus, you're building now this major data center. I don't know, do we call it a hub or site in Sines, I think it is. It'd just be good, I suppose, again, just a bit of background as to the sort of the how, the why, the when, and what the build out plan. There's a lot there, but just yeah, give us some kind of narrative as to from inception to where you are now and beyond.
Yeah, sure. So it's been a project in development for a few years now. Obviously, given the size and scale, there's been changes within the company. I've been on board officially for a few months now, coming from the industry. The CEO now is Rob Dunn, who's also a veteran and used to run construction for Digital Realty in EMEA. So we've got a community now of new leaders, let's call them, also from industry, really, from Google, AWS, all of the big names that when you walk around the office, there's people that have joined from various tech companies. But now it's really in the ramp up stage. And by that, I mean, the first building is now operational. was originally slated for 14 megawatts, but now it's going to be squeezed up to 28, 29 megawatts. And that is a big building, as you can imagine, but scales in comparison to the next ones when you think about size, because Sin 2, Sin 3, Sin 4, Sin 5, and 6, so five more buildings are going to be developed. We haven't broken ground yet on Sin 2, but hopefully this year, based on customer signings. But that first building is going to be in the region of 180 megawatts, to give you a feel. So a vast building. And then each one after that will be in that region or pushing up to 200, 220 megawatts each. So you're looking at, development that'll go well into the early 2030s, I would say, depending on build schedule. But we're very aggressive in terms of, once we start on Sin 2, we want to get that up and going, into the middle of next year at the latest, if we can start at that sort of time frame this year. And demand is strong, both international, primarily US, because of the audience we're looking at, given the amount of power there, given the renewable attributes, which are really attractive to these large tech companies. A very, very attractive site for AI learning and training, as you can imagine. Just for those servers, GPU processors that need a huge amount of energy and liquid cooling flexibility, which our campus is built from the ground up for.
Yeah, I was going to. I mean, you sort of semi-answered the next question. Is it AI? I know people are talking about these sort of AI factories. Is that primarily what you're looking to build and attract people for that purpose, or are sort of, shall we say, inverted commas, normal sort of customers and applications looked at as well, or is AI the sort of major focus for yourselves?
I would say it's a primary focus for sure, given the size and power availability of the campus. It's ideal really for AI training, but also inference, but directly training. However, in Sin 1, we're doing traditional network, cloud network, and content provision as well. So we can definitely do everything. I think if you said what is the sweet spot of Start Campus as a data center operator and location in Sines for now, we haven't announced any growth yet, but Start Campus will look at eventually at expansion to other locations. It's the uniqueness is our AI scale build, both from the power size and also the cooling technologies and the liquid cooling flexibility we put into our design. It's very much a sweet spot for those sorts of workloads, which are very much the focus today of all the large tech companies.
Okay, and in terms of the, I suppose the USPs, again, I think you've obviously touched on a few of them, but you mentioned sustainability in particular. Is that the main differentiator? You obviously mentioned you've got huge power availability, but what is it? If someone's evaluating different sites, what would you say would be the things that would attract folks to yourselves as opposed to some of the other, whether it's locations or just different facilities, if you like?
Yeah, good question. I would say the power is a big differentiator, obviously. So the 1.2 gigawatt availability is really unmatched. Obviously, we have to build the first large building, but to have that sort of power available for ramp up is really unique in Europe, especially, and as I mentioned, in the tier one market. So I think power availability is huge. The renewability message is unique, not just from the 100% renewability we can offer on site, but as I mentioned, the seawater cooling is really getting the tech companies very excited because of the water usage that people sometimes forget within data centers being such an issue. So that's another angle. And then I would say the third, a little bit tied to the first one around energy, is the fact that we're so flexible on the AI build side. So a lot of the existing operators that aren't building from the ground up are having to retrofit buildings to fit in the liquid cooling and the high density that the GPU focused servers need. Where we've developed the campus designs and build in such a way that It can fit any shape, if that makes sense, of liquid cooling. And we work with a number of partners. I mean, we announced a case study with Nautilus, who do some phenomenal tech around liquid cooling, just because that's what the customer there wanted. So we're talking about a 6-7 megawatt, very dense suite that's liquid cooled. But we've also announced partnerships with JetCool and a few and others. So we'll work with the liquid cooling that the customers need. The seawater cooling is really the foundation of the building's cooling, if that makes sense. And then any liquid cooling solution that the customer needs will pull from that infrastructure the water that they want and then put it back. And then we make sure it's of the right temperature and put it back to the sea. So that's the circulation of the solution, which is very unique. But that flexibility in design, I think, Philip, is very important because it's customers need all shapes and sizes now, based on what they're doing with their infrastructure.
Okay, and just follow up re the sustainability, which obviously is impressive, the seawater cooling as you explained. But I think you've got a roadmap for net zero by 2030. So I mean, it sounds as if you're well on the way with all you've explained. But what more, or what else is there? What are the missing pieces, or what more do you need to do to to make sure that you hit that target, I suppose, is the question.
Yeah, an aggressive target, but it's something we're comfortable on hitting. So it's a few things. Obviously, when you talk about net zero, especially in our sector, you've got to look at the whole supply chain. So that makes it interesting for us because, as you know, data centers, you work with so many different companies. What we're good at and what we focused on is the best of breed suppliers that are also within themselves looking at a net zero target and making moves towards that. So that's one thing that we will work on in the coming years. The other thing is the renewable access. So as I said, we're 100% renewable on site, but Portugal itself is 70%, which is a huge number. But they're also going to make steps in the coming years to get up to 90+% themselves. So that will impact as more power we pull into the site, if that makes sense. As we hit the 1.2 gigawatts total usage, we're going to need to pull more renewable from the grid. And that means working closely with the Portuguese government, which we're very comfortable on as well. And just engaging with customers more and more because the density is increasing and more heat is being produced. So, the liquid cooling and the seawater we use is going to really stand out over time around this net zero. And I think that's going to be one of the foundation blocks, Philip, along with the renewable energy, is just the way we'll achieve zero water usage effectiveness, which is very unique for this industry.
Okay, and I also intrigued having a look at the company and stuff that you've got this Gamma community platform. So I'd be interested in just if you can tell us a little bit more about what it is and why it's important for you as a company to have this sort of project.
Yeah, good question. Thanks for raising. So Gamma is an initiative we started very early on. It's a few different angles to it. One is we're the site we're building. Obviously, the campus. It's not a factory. It's not it won't generate pollution for the region, which I think the region is happy about. But we are building on a lot of land, clearly, and within that land, we've looked and worked with local universities already around what habitats will be impacted, both from plants to to small animals within ponds there, etc. And we've even started looking at how we move those to new locations and working with the community on that regard. But it goes deeper a little bit than that. Also, it's looking at local housing in the region because as you can imagine, we're employing 300, 400, 500 people a day, and that's just going to go up and up throughout the construction phase. So all these people need housing, and it's something within the local community that needs to be looked at anyway. So we're doing our part. We can't solve it ourselves, but we're working with the community and the local government to achieve that. Even to the most recent activity we did was really in the local schools. So the fact we're one of the most important tech projects, not just in Portugal, but in Europe, given the size we're building at. we're bringing into the campus some of the world's most leading tech companies, as you can imagine, from AI to cloud, to processor semiconductor companies, GPU as a service, etc. So we're looking at the schools not just in the local area but across Portugal, and maybe and looking at how we maybe expand that to EU, and basically tech for good. How do we impact social usage of tech within school age children, which is a major topic, as you know, amongst some of the large tech companies. But as a data center operator and working with these tech companies, we're working with different charities and associations that we feel can help the local community and then Portugal as a whole, as I mentioned.
Yeah, and on that side, the sort of data center as a good citizen, or however you want to characterize it, do you think that's going to become increasingly important and a more of a differentiator over time? Because obviously there's a whole range of data centers, and as you highlighted earlier on, a lot of them in a particular place for a specific reason, but even those have the opportunity to become more, shall we say, socially responsible. Do you think that is going to grow in importance, or with what's happening in the world, shall we say, I know it's a bit chaotic at the time and there's a bit of a sort of pushback, do you think almost that might disappear, or do you think it is going to continue to grow in importance?
Yeah, good question. I think it is a chaotic time. We recently attended a large event in Hawaii, PTC, and it was really interesting for our team to see ex-colleagues from the industry and also see what's happening in the industry. One thing I'd say, which is interesting because we've been tracking it for a while, is the when I was at my previous employer, also within data center industry, sustainability and the green message was very high on the agenda of everybody, both from a customer perspective and operator perspective, and rightly so. What we've noticed recently is that's almost dropped a little bit, to a focus now on just building, if that makes sense, especially in the US. And that means using, still looking at the green side of things, but really it's just about power, and just getting things built. So that agenda has slipped a little bit, and we feel very strongly that it shouldn't, and we're still positioning ourselves as the sustainable AI ready data center developer. That's sort of the change I've seen. Now I'm certain it will come back, but in this rush for building and power availability, I think that's dropped a little bit. On the social agenda, I think it's always been one step removed for data center operators, because it's really something that our customers have been engaged with, right? The large social media, the large tech, the large cloud companies that use our facilities are focused on. We're trying to change that a little bit by saying, look, we're part of the supply chain. We're almost the owner of the rainforest, if that makes sense. We're the owner of the ecosystem of where these tech companies build and develop. So we should play a part in that as well. So hopefully that brings up the agenda into other data center operators globally as well.
Okay, and maybe just in finishing, and you, I think, mentioned it earlier on, you started out life in Portugal. Do you have, and I'm sure you're not going to give me your innermost secrets, but just a general direction of travel, if you like, whether the Iberian Peninsula is going to remain your sort of focus for the foreseeable future, or you're looking further afield? Just anything you can share as to how Start Campus might develop over time, I suppose.
Yeah, it's definitely potential growth within Portugal. I think Portugal itself, we're at Sines, which is an hour and a half south of Lisbon. So I think an additional location in Portugal probably shouldn't surprise anyone. We've got plenty of space and power to fill at Sines, 1.2 gigawatts. So that's going to keep us busy, no doubt. But there's definite plans for Portuguese growth, and nothing I can share without getting in trouble. But let's say there's probably growth outside of Portugal at some stage, but there's nothing we can announce or look at yet. I think the Sines campus, given its size and uniqueness, is going to keep us very busy in the coming years, rightly so. And hopefully we fill that at a really great pace, which makes it a phenomenal project for Portugal and Europe from a tech perspective. And then, like I said, probably another location in Portugal wouldn't be a surprise, and then something further afield within good time.
I suppose maybe I can put it a slightly different. I asked the question, in terms of where you might consider. Will obviously you've explained the unique offering that you've got where you are. Is that the kind of location you would look for elsewhere? So you continue to have that advantage. So what I'm saying is you wouldn't necessarily look for the middle of Europe. Something around a coast is if not compulsory, something you'd look at, or renewables, etc. So there'll be certain sort of core principles, shall we say, that will guide your expansion plans. Is that fair?
Yeah, very good question. Yes, I mean a few things. One is we would, like I said, the sustainable AI ready developer. That's what is the Start Campus brand now in the data center world, and that's where we've put our flag out. I would strongly say, sustainable AI ready. So what does sustainable AI ready mean? Exactly what you said. From an AI ready perspective, it means power, significant power. So I think we would hope and expect to be at a certain tier. Now you can't build one gigawatt everywhere because you just won't be able to access it. But you're gonna build at a certain at a certain level of megawatts, which means you're going to be of that scale. I think we'll try and look to that as a definite trigger. And then the sustainable piece, as you said. Now it's again not always possible to be by the sea or by a big body of water to create that heat sink effect, but that's something we'll definitely look at. But renewable, healthy and good renewable energy access, I think, is going to be a must for us. Because if we want to keep that sustainable and AI ready, there's just no way around it, given the amount of energy you need. So I think that will dictate also the locations. And that could be interesting, like I said, given where we are in the rise of Iberia. We'll continue to look at Portugal as our home for initial next growth, and then after that, which geography and which specific locations can accommodate that sort of specifics will be interesting. And power stations is an interesting comment to make, maybe a final comment to make, that where we built in Sines, right next to us is a non-active and soon to be taken down coal power station. And the reason for that is not because we wanted the power station, because we're building building separately, but was the pipe work in the sea. As you can imagine, we're going to pull a million plus, I believe it is, square foot of water daily from the sea, and then treat it and put it back and make sure the heat's right. But to do that, you need certain pipe work. So those sorts of locations are interesting. And it's also, I find, a very interesting story of that transition from energy sector to technology and data centers now, which we're seeing all over the world because of this requirement for huge amount of energy for these campuses.
Okay, it's been great to chat, and some fascinating thoughts and insights into what's going on with yourselves and also obviously the industry a bit more generally. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Thanks for the time.